Let's turn to distance. We know that a boat cannot sail directly into the wind, it has to tack. The sailing angle differs between different classes, so 45 degrees would be roughly where it is in an average dinghy. Choosing where and when to tack is an essential part of plotting the course of the beat. Generally, we tack when headed and press on when lifted. What does that mean? If you find that the telltales start to lift on the windward side of the sail and the luff, the front, goes soft, and you feel the need to bear away, pull the tiller towards you, turn the boat downwind, you're being backed. Tack. Or count to 10 and then tack, because sometimes the wind flicks back again. If you feel that you can point higher without any loss of speed, you're being lifted, and you should press on to the lay line. So, with the wind in this direction, 90 degrees at the mark, that's the lay line. That is the point where if you tack, you can make the mark. You shouldn't really be sailing beyond the lay line, because you're going to have to sail further to get to the mark. And in the books I used to read when I was very keen on reading books about sailing, generally speaking, they would say, don't go out to the lay line too soon. Because if you go out to the lay line and the wind shifts, you might find that you've sailed too far. And the wind does shift all the time. So stay within that cone until you're a reasonably short tack away from the buoy. That will reduce the distance that you have to sail. So you might hear sometimes people talk about, I had a bad beat because we overstood the mark. What does overstanding the mark? Overstanding the mark means sailing beyond the lay line, tacking back and finding that you're on a broad reach to come back into it. You've sailed too far. Now, all the while at this beat, we have to be aware of the rules. Give way to boats on starboard, either by tacking or by bearing away behind them, keeping clear of boats to leeward. If the boat to leeward is able to sail closer to the wind than you are, that's no excuse. You have to tack off to keep clear. But remember too, if you are the right-of-way boat, you cannot alter course if that would result in a collision without allowing the give-way boat room and opportunity to keep clear. Rule 16. Are we okay for time?
Yeah.
Got about another 10 minutes.
That's fine.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah. Don't stop now.
Right. And we also need to think about other boats around us in terms of their disturbance of our wind. Boats sail best in undisturbed air. So if a boat were to tack on your lee bow, do we know what that means? So, boat on starboard, boat on port. He's got to keep clear. So what he does, he tacks right underneath the lee bow of this boat. When boats go through the air, if you could see them in a wind tunnel, you would see all sorts of disturbed air coming off this sail and compromising the performance of this boat. So sometimes you may have heard of the slam dunk in America's Cup racing. Coming up here and tacking right under the lee bow is the slam dunk, the idea being to force this boat to tack away. And it doesn't just end there actually, because if this boat manages to cross in front and then tack, you're also going to get dirty air. So if it's a relatively short distance between where you are and where you need to get to, you may just have to suck it up. But if it's quite a long way, it may actually be in your interest to tack for clear air. even if that means sailing a slightly further distance, because you'll go faster. Right, we're coming up to the windward mark. We need to consider, now it's a shame that Mike isn't here, because apparently Mike didn't like what happened to him at the weekend.
What happened?
So,
You'll find out.
Okay.
so here's Mike, not Atkins, Mike
Okay.
Cayley. Mike Cayley, Andrew Peyton. Mark 5, 7, can't remember.
Careful what you say, it's on camera.
He's ahead.
Joking.
Okay, Mike, he's ahead. Tacks onto port and heads to bear away around the mark. I'm now here and I say, starboard! And he's good as gold. He tacks back. He has to. When boats are close hauled, on opposite tacks, you take the mark away. So the stuff about water at the mark doesn't apply. It's port and starboard. If the boats are on the same tack, then windward bait gives way to leeward bait, unless, I need to, one rope length, two rope lengths, three rope lengths. Right, it has a slightly different wind direction. That's the direction of landing. Wind's coming from over here. Boats are heading up to the board. Okay? That's our scenario. Now, was not beginner. This bait is accelerating, it's a different class, it's going faster than this one. If before the first leading boat got equipment gets into the 3 boat length circle, before then, if this boat establishes an overlap, so its bow is in front of this one's stern, this boat has got to give water to this boat going down the buoy. Once this guy has got into that circle, he's entitled to mark room. This guy is not allowed to accelerate up the inside of him and push him out.
Just go through that one again. You're saying there's a circle that extends from the board.
So 3 boat lengths, which is quite a distance. If the boat ahead enters the 3 boat length circle before the boat behind has established an overlap, this boat is not entitled to claim water at the mark. Okay?
Yeah.
You looked at me as if you were about to answer a question.
I was just trying to see.
I was probably standing in the way of the board for the camera, but I'm not going to do it again. Right. So we've gone around the windward mark. We bear away onto the reach. As you go around the mark, you need to make some rigging changes. Ease the sheets, loosen the outhaul, loosen the cunningham to the degree appropriate, and slacken the kicker so that the telltales on the leech, that's the trailing edge of the sail, are mostly flying. Now let's consider the centerboard. Who thinks the centerboard's function is to stop the boat from capsizing? Good? You're all right. The primary function of the centerboard is to stop the boat from being blown sideways by the wind. It provides lateral resistance to top up the lateral resistance of that part of the hull which is below the water. Upwind, we need maximum lateral resistance as the wind is trying to blow the boat sideways. As we turn away from the wind, we need less lateral resistance so we can raise the centerboard. Perhaps by a quarter or a third on a reach. This reduction in the amount of the board beneath the hull reduces the skin friction, so it reduces the amount of wetted surface, so we should go a bit faster. Thinking now about trim and balance. In most situations you will want to move your weight back a bit from the beat, but not so much as it causes the transom to dig in. And if I'm on port reach, so I'm sitting here, I want to cant the boat over slightly on top of me. Does anyone know why we do that?
No. It's to reduce the amount of hull in the water.
Well, no, it's not, but it's a good answer. And it might well do that. But the thing is, the shape of a hull, particularly in uniroot boats, so one sail boats, but also in boats with tubes, the biggest sail is the mainsail, right? And the mainsail is behind the mast. And when the pressure on the sail will want, unless you resist the force, the pressure on the sail will want to turn the boat into the wind, okay? And to counteract that, we pull the rudder towards us. And what's the rudder but a brake? So if we can reduce the amount of rudder, we reduce the brake. We take the foot off the brake. And you can do that by heeling the boat over. Why? Because if you heel the boat over, you end up with more of a curve on this side and more of a straight line on this side. So heeling the boat over will make the hull want to turn that way. The sail is making want to turn that way, and therefore you've got the two forces cancel each other out, and you don't need to keep constantly wagging the tiller. Right. So we come to the end of that first reach. We're now going to jibe. Many people are frightened of jibing, especially in heavy weather, and for good reason. Because the boom comes across exceptionally quickly, and my God, it hurts if it hits you. And there is also a greater risk of capsize than with a tack. So, just three things to say. First, you don't have to jibe. You can wear round. So you go up into the wind, you tack, you bear away, you'll lose time, but you won't lose as much time as you lose if you capsize. And it's less likely to end up with a boom against the kidneys. If you are going to jibe, then fast is best. The faster the speed you carry into the jibe, the faster you will exit, and the less wind pressure there will be in the sail. Classically, people see a dark patch of water behind, believe as it is, sign of a gust, and go for a quick jibe before it hits, only to be completely wiped out. Better to wait for the gust, get some real speed going, and then go for it. I know it's easy to say. The centerboard should not be fully down, so that the boat does not grip the water and trip over when the sail fills on the new course. Keep the mast vertical. If it goes too far to leeward on the new tack, the boom will hit the water, and once that happens, you're more or less doomed. Because once the boom is in the water, you can't let the sail out any further. So it fills up, as does the boat. Right, nearly finished. The run. This is the last leg of today's presentation. So at the mark, we bear away from the reach onto a dead run. Once again, port gives way to starboard and windward to leeward. Now, does anybody know how a sail works?
No, nobody does. Quite so.
Perhaps I won't bother with it because we're running out of time. But look, if a sail was just a sheet of material against which the wind pushes, then we would never be able to go faster than the speed of the wind. In fact, we would go more slowly because of the friction between the hull and the water. In fact, the sail works like the wing of an aeroplane, with the leeward side creating low pressure compared with the windward side, and it's into that low pressure that the boat gets pulled. Why am I mentioning this now? Well, downwind we may have a choice. So, that's the buoy we come round. We're going dead downwind here. We can sail. Ooh, I'll get water. Put the boom out. We're dead downwind. If we're going dead downwind, we're not going to go faster than the wind speed itself. Because of the way that the aerofoil works, the aerofoil principle works on a boat, sometimes it makes sense not to go dead downwind, but to do 1, 2, 3 chimes. It's a mental calculation you've got to do at the time. It's all around something called VMG, which is velocity made good, which on a yacht you have a complicated computer which tells you whether your VMG is good or bad. But essentially, it's calculating the time it's going to take you to get from here to this buoy. And it's a combination of your speed through the water and your speed over the ground. At Bark Green, it does happen that it makes sense not to go on a dead run, but to put in a couple of jibes. Bob's very good at doing it. You are. And you know, but a lot of people, I think, well, it's great. I can just sail straight to the next mark. But sail out, absolutely fine. But if you did a couple of jibes, you might get a little bit more quickly. Right. The finish. Having rounded the last mark, then it's a dash for the line on whatever point of sail is required. You finish when any part of your hull touches the finishing line on the course side. That's rule 28. A couple of other things. If you break a when boats meet rule, port and starboard, windward, leeward, you can exonerate yourself by sailing clear of other boats as soon as possible and making 2 turns in the same direction, including 2 tacks and 2 jibes. If you touch a mark, you can exonerate yourself by sailing clear of other boats and making 1 turn, including a tack and a jibe. And finally, as far as I can tell from my recent researches, there is no requirement to hail starboard if you are the right-of-way boat, but it's probably a good idea to do so. That's the end. You're very kind. I would take questions, but looking at the time, you might decide that it's time to go home. Up to you.
Did you, in your reading of the 2021, is it called?
2021 to 2024.
Did you read the variations that apply to sailboat racing?
No.
I was hoping you would have done. Probably means I've got to go and read them. Now, there's a difference in the water at the moment.
Is there?
I
don't care.
No, I know. But you should care because we sail both boards and dinghies at the same time in the same race.
Yeah, but I mean,
so we need a local rule, which I think generally we apply.
Yeah.
But I think that local rule ought to be, because the dinghies, generally speaking, are the major fleet, that the boards sail to the dinghy rule. Whereas when it's a board-only race, we sail to the sailboard rule, which is not 3 board lengths.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things which I wondered but didn't bother to follow up with any research, is whose boat lengths are we talking about?
Ah,
Is it 3 inches boat lengths?
No, it's the leading boat.
Okay. All right. Oh, that makes sense. Right.
So just going back to that 3 boat lengths rule, so you're saying if you're within that zone, of 3
Yeah.
boat lengths to the mark, and you've got a boat behind you, is there an instruction you can shout to that other boat to say you have the right of way?
It's a very good question. I'm glad you answered it, and I don't know the answer. I have spent some time today looking at the rules, trying to find out. Simon, you might know this. I can't find any statement in the rules which says that you must hail for water, or that if you are in receipt of a hail for water which you don't recognise, you must hail back, not entitled. I can't find any requirement for hailing.
No, you can ask for mark room.
Yeah.
You can't ask for water now.
Right. Yeah, but
there's no
obligation to ask for mark room.
No.
But
No, you're entitled to it.
Yeah.
But they only have to give you room for you to do a proper rounding.
Yeah, to round the mark in a seaman-like fashion.
But I think if you ask for water, the boat has to give it to you, even if you're not entitled to it.
Yeah.
And then
But it sounds like from what Simon's saying, that actually the terminology
Yeah,
is come on from that.
there's only I think
But
2
they
commands
have to
where you
give
have
you-
to call.
You know, you finish my sentence. They have to give you the water
Yeah.
and then protest if they think you are not entitled to it. But they have to give you the water.
Yeah. Well, I suppose any other thing would inevitably cause collision.
Yes.
The only time you have to hail is if you're coming to an obstruction
Yeah.
or a shoreline.
Yeah.
So you hail, I need to tack full.
Yeah. I spotted that, but decided that at the level I was addressing the audience, they probably didn't need to do that tonight.
And then the hands goes back on the other way.
Yeah.
When you come to the finish line,
Yeah.
having your bow having gone 2 inches over the finish line,
Yeah.
you are finished.
Yes.
So what about port and starboard at that point? You still have to keep clear.
Yeah. There is.
So that's why I'm asking this
There is.
question I'm asking.
There is something. You finish when any part of your equipment in its natural position breaks the finish line.
Yeah.
But I think you then have to continue sailing to clear the finish line.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're in trouble.
That was simply that's all the question I'm asking.
You finish when any part of your hull touches the finishing line from the course side, but not if you thereafter take a penalty, correct an error in sailing the course made at the line, or continue to sail the course. You need to have a look at Rule 28.
And then not
It could be a port and starboard.
So if you infringe before you've cleared the line,
So
you haven't actually finished. You have,
Mm.
well, you have, but you have to do a 720. And if somebody comes past you while you're doing the 720, they read it.
Yeah.
You lost
Yeah, I don't.
because you haven't cleared the line.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would seem to me to make more sense, but obviously we're not going to be able to do that here, is that you finish when the last bit of your boat clears the line.
That's my point I'm trying to
Yeah,
make.
but you finish when the first bit of your boat touches the line.
meaning that you can then stall and back off
Yes.
because you finished.
You don't cross it.
Well, I think you have an obligation. I think you have an obligation to cross the line, even though you've finished.
You can back off.
Can you?
Yes.
All right.
But then
Sure.
the rules of the road come into play, not the racing rules.
The international collision.
So if you're moving astern, you've got no rights, etc.
Well,
Yeah, you still have to keep clear
Yeah.
of boats.
like every good teacher, I've only managed to
That's
stay
quite
half a
stuff.
page of the head of the class. So you're in danger of trespassing into areas which I haven't researched.
Andy,
Yeah.
just can you differentiate? You did do it, but I missed it. Differentiate what you have to, when you have to do a 720 compared to a 360.
You do a 360 if you hit a buoy,
Yeah.
and you do a 720 if you infringe any of the keep
So
clear
anything
regulations.
else?
Yeah. So
Okay.
port and starboard windward.
Ah.
Unless you're a windsurfer.
Unless you're a windsurfer, in which case you can hit the mark, but you have to go around it in the right direction. And if you infringe,
We do 360 360.
We do a 360 instead of a 720.
Okay, that's what, yeah.
Can you just explain, if you're an OOD, can you disqualify a boat or can't you? And under what conditions?
Apparently not.
You can protest.
Well, if a boat comes to the line without having signed in, then they are not participating in the race. So you don't record their position and you don't give them a gun at the end. If you see a boat infringing and there is no protest or I think if you see a boat has not sailed the correct course, then you don't. Or if they're on course side of the race start, you don't give them a finishing, but they haven't sailed the right course.
Can you do that if they haven't sailed the right course?
Yes. So I think so.
I was led to understand, as long as they went through the line, that if they sailed a buoy on the other side and went the wrong side of it, that was down to them.
No.
Or someone else to protest.
No, I think the officer of the day is entitled to.
I think so, yeah.
Simon?
I thought the opposite. I thought it was up to somebody on the water to protest.
If it's an incident, yes.
Well, it seems to me that a boat which innocently or deliberately sails the wrong course is in fundamental breach of the rule which I read out right at the very beginning, and say whatever if I was the OOD and I saw a boat going the wrong side of a buoy or missing out a leg, I would disqualify them. Unless it was an optimist who
Doesn't the race officer have to bring a protest against the boat? You can't disqualify them because they have to prove that they didn't. You have to prove that they didn't sail the course. You can't just disqualify them.
I
think that's the scenario.
I thought you were just responsible for the start and the finish.
Yeah, and I think you have to bring protest against the competitor.
But perhaps it's just a point of clarification.
I'm not standing here as an expert.
Because you need to have a witness to prove that they didn't.
Forum now.
Yeah.
My opinion is, for what it's worth, that the race officer has control of the first triangle of the course, whether a boat completes starts correctly and sails around the first mark. After that, you have nothing to do with it until the finish. If they've infringed or sailed the wrong course, you've got the right to protest them, or preferably beforehand ask them to retire by pointing out the mistake they've made, or somebody on the water could protest them and you can be a witness. But I don't think you've the right to disqualify them.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, practice varies, because I know that I have experience here of perhaps, but it's not unusual to have the outer distance mark as a line, as a buoy of the mark of the course. And it's sometimes quite easy to forget that and sail the wrong side of it. And I have done that in the past, and what happens when you cross the line is you don't get a gun, you go and say to the OD, why didn't I get a gun? And he said, well, you didn't sail the right course. So opinions and practice seem to differ, but I'm sure there's a right answer.
I'm not sure.
Well,
That's why I threw
It's a
that
good
out.
technical question.
It's one. I think it's one for collectively us to clarify. All of us, isn't it?
I'd interpret it that a boat that sails the wrong course is not eligible to finish, and if a boat does finish, then I would disqualify them having sailed the wrong course and would let them protest me. So I've done it.
That sounds like pretty good.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that?
No, not no, but that's the way I've done it.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I think a lot of sailors have trouble with there is how to unwind if you go around a buoy the wrong side.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to get that wrong, or a lot of people do. I don't know whether you want.
So anybody wants to have a good diagram of unwinding?
I get confused.
I mean, in theory, it's quite simple, but as you pointed out, a lot of people get it wrong. I think if you make a determined effort, most people will let it go.
I'm not standing up here with any confidence at all. I don't know what I'm doing.
You're doing all right.
So, let's say, for example, the correct way to go around, we've got the wind coming down here. The correct way to go around this buoy is like that. So we've got a boat that's got it wrong,
You're standing in front of the buoy.
and he's come up, and he's gone round and gone up here.
So the first thing he's got to do is go back again.
So he's got to, yeah. So he's got to retrace his footsteps,
Yeah,
and then go around here.
correctly. Yes.
Surely if he hasn't gone around the buoy the right way, then that hasn't been the right the course. So therefore all he has to do is to come back and go and he can cross, he can go around the buoy.
Well, there's this thing
way.
about a piece of string,
Yeah,
that in order to satisfy the requirements of the race, your course, if
Yeah.
mapped out by a
Fair.
piece of string, has got to go around all the buoys in the right direction.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy.